What's up, everybody? I am your host, a crazy psychic guy who helps rich people imprison spirits. And that is my co-host, a dead serial killer who spends his free time roaming around a junkyard. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where today we have a special episode. And what makes it special, you may ask? We have, for the first time ever, a guest that was actually in the movie we are covering this week. How crazy is that? So on this episode, we are talking about Steve Beck's 13 Ghosts from 2001. And later on, we will be joined by one of the ghosts himself, C Ernst Harth, who played the Great Child. We actually got to have a amazing conversation with him the other day where we talked about so much stuff, including his scenes in Trick or Treat, which we talked about on our episode on that movie. So listen to that if you haven't. We talked about a ton of 13 Ghost stuff, including alternate versions of the Ghost and the movie. And we will be releasing the whole 2-hour-long video later this week. But more importantly, 2 of you guys will be winning some free autographs from the man himself. All you got to do is head over to his Facebook or Instagram page, give it a like or follow, and shoot us a comment, a message, a carrier pigeon, message in the bottle, whatever you got to do so we can put your name in the hat. And that's exactly how we're going to do it. We're going to put all your guys' names in like a hat or something. We're going to draw out 2. It's going to be very fair.
If somebody can get us a carrier pigeon, it might not be that fair.
Yeah,
I
true.
might be picking whoever gets the pigeon.
If the UK listeners can get a message in the bottle
Yeah.
here before the end of the week, they might have an upper hand. And one of these people that wins this autograph is also going to win this awesome DVD with the autograph that has 10 banger movies on it. So we talked about it a little, I think last week. We came across this really cool kind of, I don't know how many discs it is, but I'm going to go ahead and name the movies here because this is the reason we wanted to give it away. We were going through some movies and we came across this and we were like, holy shit, this is like one of the best multi-movie packs we had ever seen, if not the best. So the movies are, damn, I can't see it.
Getting old.
Getting old. So we got The Cabin in the Woods, a movie we covered. That's amazing. It Follows. I love It Follows. You're Next. The Possession. Cabin Fever. The Last Exorcism. Sinister. The Haunting in Connecticut. Leatherface. And The Descent. What a fucking lineup.
Yeah, we've covered 3 of those movies, and there's a handful of those that I know we will be covering in the future.
Holy shit, this is a fucking lineup, man.
Yeah.
This is great, yeah. Basically 10 fantastic movies you're going to get for free, and you're going to get an autograph from C Ernst Harth. So yeah, definitely get that shit in, shoot us a message. Good luck to you all.
Stickers too.
You get stickers, yeah, of course.
We're gonna put some sticker packs, throw some different shit in there.
Yep.
We'll play it by ear.
And with that being said, are you ready to dive into 13 Ghosts?
I am definitely ready. This has been a movie that has been on the verge of being covered. We've talked about it a lot. This is one of those nostalgic movies. I think we both loved this movie when we were younger and then grew up and was kind of had a little lesser of an opinion of it. And I will say, learning some of the stuff I know now and then rewatching it, I kind of have a rejuvenated opinion again on it.
I do as well.
So
I do as well.
I am very, very excited to get into this one.
Yeah, this has been an episode we've been working on actually for a while because we had the interview and trying to put everything together. So yeah, and it's also been requested many times, but we've kind of kept putting it off, and we're finally here. So let's do it.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at GrindhouseSyndicate.Horror.Pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want us to get trapped in a glass house that's full of ghosts, give us a review. 13 Ghosts is a 2001 supernatural horror film directed by Steve Beck and a remake of a 1960s film directed by William Castle. The film stars Tony Shalhoub, Matthew Lillard, Shannon Elizabeth, and our man and friend of the show, C Ernst Harth. It was produced by Robert Zemeckis, Joel Silver, and Gilbert Adler, along with Warner Brothers Studios, Columbia Pictures, and Dark Castle Entertainment. It had a budget of $42 million and a box office of $68.5 million, causing it to be considered a box office disappointment. Now, to understand this film, how this film came to be, we got to go back to the beginning, like way back. See, 13 Ghosts was originally a 1960s American supernatural horror film produced and directed by William Castle and written by Rob White. And one thing Castle was and still is known for was his gimmicks. And not only to get people in seats, but to have a damn good time while sitting in those seats. And 13 Ghosts was no different, because with this film, the audience had a choice whether they wanted to see the ghosts or not. It's really interesting.
That's a fucking awesome premise.
It sounds a little confusing, I know, but I will explain. See, most scenes were in black and white, but scenes involving the ghosts were shown in a process dubbed Illusiono, which is a very 1960s
Sounds like
name.
fucking Houdini came
Yeah.
up with that.
And after filming, elements of the actors and the sets, so pretty much everything except for the ghosts, had a blue filter applied to the footage, while the ghosts had a red filter applied, and then they were superimposed over top of the frame. Audiences were then given viewing glasses with red and blue cellophane filters, kind of like the 3D glasses, but a little different. Because unlike having one red and one blue over each eye, with these, you had to look through a single color with both eyes, which means looking through the red filter intensifies the images of the ghosts, while the blue filter completely removes them from the picture. How fucking awesome is that?
That's pretty cool.
You can
And
watch the movie two completely different ways.
Yeah, no, I think that was a insanely genius gimmick.
Yeah.
And to be able to pull that off that long ago, very impressive.
Very impressive. Now, despite this awesome idea, this version of 13 Ghosts wasn't super popular with critics, saying it's basically basic haunted house flick. The ghosts lack personality and they aren't very scary. And because the ghosts were kind of lame, a lot of people actually found the film scarier if they used their blue glasses and just watched the movie with the implication of the ghosts without actually seeing them.
Well, you know, we've talked about that on the show, like with reveals and stuff, and characters taking off their masks.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're gonna do a reveal, it's gotta be as scary or scarier than what your mind creates.
Yep. So fast forward to 1998, where writers and producers Joel Silver, Gilbert Adler, and Robert Zemeckis come together to form a little production company called Dark Castle Entertainment. which would focus on mostly horror films. And yes, the castle in Dark Castle is an ode to William Castle. So between 1998 and 2003, Dark Castle decided to pay homage to the man himself by remaking some of Castle's most influential and popular films, with the first being House on Haunted Hill, which, if you listen to our episode on that movie, did really bad at the box office.
Yeah. The Dark Castle movies tended to not do very great at the box office.
So, despite this, they decided to keep going with this theme, and their second film would be a remake of 13 Ghosts. And in order to pull this off, this movie was going to need huge budget, which ended up almost being a bad thing, because when this movie didn't perform well as they hoped, it actually almost financially tanked Dark Castle Entertainment. Also, when 13 Ghosts didn't do what they thought it was going to do, it made them realize that they were going to have to abandon the William Castle movies idea and move on to original films, which the first original movie was Ghost Ship, which also didn't do great. But after that, we got the mega hit Gothica, which ended up bringing $150 million in. But they did somewhat return to the Castle movies when they did House of Wax. So
Yeah.
they didn't completely abandon it.
I wonder if the Castle movies not doing great at the box office was part of the reason they brought in Paris Hilton to
Good
House of
point.
Wax.
Good point.
To kind of, because I think out of the Dark Castle movies we've covered, I think that was the most successful one at the box office.
Well, excluding Gothica. Gothica was
yeah,
their biggest movie.
Yeah, for some reason I forget. I don't even think about Gothica when I think of the 4, and I think it's more the actual Castle movies.
It's very different than,
which is, I think it's 13 Ghosts, Hill House, the Haunting on
House on Haunted Hill.
House on Haunted Hill. Sorry, Netflix fucking me up here.
Yeah.
Ghost Ship, which was an original idea.
It was original.
And then the House of Wax.
Yep.
That's the 4 main Dark Castle ones I always think of. And Ghost Ship is like super boring from what I remember. It's been a while since I've watched it, but it has a fucking like incredible intro. I think we were talking about this not that long ago. Really cool intro to that. But yeah, I do wonder if the box office failures of these movies is what brought Paris Hilton to the House of Wax.
So, this film was shot primarily in British Columbia, Canada, with the exterior shots of the house being created using CGI and the interior shots of the house being filmed at Bridge Studios, also in British Columbia. I'm not going to get too much into the set or filming here because we do dive into some of that with C Ernst Harth, and we'll probably mention some of it throughout the episode, so we'll save that. So, 13 Ghosts originally received genuinely negative reviews from critics for its lack of scares and editing style, but despite that, the production and the set design was consistently praised by critics and audiences alike. So fast forward to years after its original release, and I think it's safe to say the film has earned itself a cult following. And as of 2023, Dark Castle announced a television adaptation of 13 Ghosts. It's not in this episode, but when we release the whole interview, we do talk about that show, the show they're doing. We don't have any like insider news about the show or anything, but we will talk to somebody who was in the original movie about the show. So keep an eye out for that.
The whole idea of the show, which I've mentioned probably 3 or 4 times in different episodes, is them going and giving a backstory to each of the characters, and we still have no info on if they're going to do that or not. But we do know that one of the ghosts from the original movie backs that idea.
Yep.
So we need to make that happen.
All right, so ratings. Rotten Tom, 19%.
Jesus Christ,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Is that a new low?
I don't know.
We need a Rotten Tom board.
Yeah, we do.
For their lowest.
IMDb, a 5.6 out of 10. Letterboxd, a 2.7 out of 5. But the Google average audience rating, this says a lot, is a fucking 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I said. The Google ratings are always way more on board with horror fans when we're
Yeah.
looking at a horror movie, because those are the people who took the time to go on Google and review it are generally horror fans that went and watched this movie for nostalgia reasons or whatever their reasons were. Always way more in line with our ratings, I think.
If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it for rent on Google Play, Fandango, Apple TV, or Amazon for $3.99. All right, it is time to dive into the plot of 13 Ghosts. So we start out in an old abandoned junkyard where we see crushed cars stacked as far as the eye can see. And we then focus on the chain link fence at the entrance that is locked shut and covered in police tape. And before we can get any idea what happened here, a large truck comes bursting through the gate with a convoy of vehicles behind it. And once they all come to a stop, we see people quickly getting out of the trucks and start setting something up. I hate how these dudes are dressed. Like they're like some kind of special operation science team, and they're all wearing those stupid fucking see-through plastic jackets.
It seems like, God, what's his name? The goofy ass ghost guy. The guy who wants to be the next Warrens with the museum.
Oh,
Zach Baggins.
Yeah, Zach Baggins.
That douchebag. Make his crew like dress like this.
Yeah, that's what I imagine
It's
his
he
camera
rolls
team.
up.
Yeah,
They all jump out.
Oh God, yeah.
This is Cyrus is Zach Baggins. So he's gonna have a glass house museum.
He's gonna pull up in a Model T.
I gotta say, it's been a while since I watched this movie leading up into the interview, and God, I forgot how much I loved the intro set to this movie.
Yeah.
The fucking junkyard is fucking awesome. Like the whole set in the beginning of this movie, I think is great.
Yeah. So while they're setting up all their equipment, we see an old-ass car pull up. It's kind of like a 1930s Model T or some shit.
It's like a mobster car.
Yeah.
And you know whoever jumps out of it is not going to be a good character.
Not going to be a good guy. And an old dude dressed in a suit and tie, along with another guy wearing a plastic jacket, step out of the back of the car. And these are two of our main characters. The older guy is named Cyrus Criticos, who is a very wealthy adventurer and businessman, and he is running the show here. And the younger guy is named Dennis Ravkin, and he is a kind of psychic, I guess. He can see and feel ghosts and other stuff like that. And he has been hired by Cyrus to help him find and capture these specific ghosts that belong to something called the Black Zodiac, which is exactly why they are here in this junkyard. And here in this car graveyard is a ghost named Horace Breaker Mahoney, aka the Juggernaut. And he was a serial killer who worked in this place, and he would pick up hitchhikers, bring them here, murder them, and feed the remains to his dogs. Thankfully, though, he was finally stopped when police put an undercover agent out on the road pretending to be a hitchhiker, and when Horace brought her back to the junkyard, a SWAT team managed to kill him. So we see that as soon as Dennis steps out of the car, he begins having a migraine because not only can he sense the Juggernaut, but also the over 40 victims who were killed here. And it is his professional opinion that they should just pack up and leave, because even though he is dead, the Juggernaut is still very dangerous.
You think Cyrus just got tired of paying for like new uniforms because of the blood stains? So he just made them wear these like see-through plastic fucking outfits.
I like to think that he's like, if it rains, we're not canceling.
Yeah.
Like, you got rain gear already.
It's rain or shine.
Yep. But this doesn't sound like bad news to Cyrus because he wants this ghost badly, and he basically tells Dennis to fuck off and find his ghost. So once Dennis locates this evil bastard, we then see a large crane lower a weird looking glass box. And this box is covered in an old looking writing, which we find out is a barrier spell that ghosts can't cross. And the reason this is important is because this is how they trap ghosts and contain them. After the box is in place and everybody is ready to begin, the security team walks over holding two people they found sneaking in. And this man and woman are named Damon and Kina, and they are like social justice warriors, but for magic and ghosts. That's kind of the best way to put them. And they are basically pissed about Cyrus collecting and imprisoning ghosts, because ghosts have rights too, I guess.
They're like PETA for ghosts.
Yeah.
Calling Gita.
Exactly right.
They're Gita.
Gita.
So, Gita bitch over here.
So yeah, they're bitching at Cyrus about this when suddenly Damon says, "You'll never pull it off, not without the right spells and the 13th ghost." But Dennis is confused here because he still doesn't know what Cyrus is planning on doing with these ghosts, why he would need spells, and why he was only hired to find 12 ghosts and not 13. He then tries to ask Cyrus what they are talking about, but of course he blows him off and informs security to get Damon and Kina out of here because it is time to release the bait. And what is the bait, you may ask? A fucking tanker truck filled with blood that sprays this shit all over the place as it drives through the junkyard, which I gotta say is pretty fucking awesome.
It is really awesome looking and a really awesome thing you would think to trap ghosts with.
I don't think there's a situation where you can ever disappoint anybody with a tanker truck full of blood that's like spraying out of it while it's driving.
Especially going through a junkyard at night.
It could be going through a fucking flower patch and it would still be pretty badass.
Yeah. Even Rafkin's like a tanker full of blood. Like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yeah.
This guy hunts ghosts for a living.
Yeah. So now that there is a literal trail of blood leading right to the box, we see Cyrus put on these special clear glasses that have a fancy little light on them. And the reason he does this is because we pretty quickly see that you can see ghosts while wearing these. And an interesting fact about that is, remember William Castle's gimmick for the 1960s version? Well, they wanted to pay homage to that, so they actually wrote these special glasses into the story. It's the only reason they're in there. And so now that they have everything in place, we then start to hear some Latin played over a loudspeaker, which summons the ghost. And it doesn't take long at all for him to show up as we start to see him attacking Cyrus's Special Forces science team here. And this shit is chaos because we see people flying everywhere, cars being thrown around, and even huge stacks of crushed cars being flipped over. So this dude has obviously been hitting the gym in his downtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reveal for him is fucking awesome.
Well, before we talk about that, what about the dude who gets like stuffed into the car trunk?
Well, we get three. The first three kills of this movie are all fantastic. I mean, I completely forgot. Like, I don't know how. I didn't remember these first three kills at all. Like, we get a guy who gets sucked into a car, and then all we see is like the blood splatter. Like, he implodes, and the blood just covers the inside of the windshield. Then we get the guy, which I think is the best of the three, that gets sucked into the trunk, and his body gets like bent in half backwards.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And then we get a car that lands like hood down and cuts one of them in half. Like, it lands on the guy, literally cuts him in half.
This is a great beginning.
Yeah. The opening fucking scene of this movie is fantastic.
So as this is going on, we see all the science guys retreating in fear, and this is where we get our first look at the Juggernaut, and he looks very badass and pretty fucking scary. He's like this 7-foot tall dude with a tattered mechanic shirt on, very evil looking face and like blood and wounds all over him. and he kind of looks like a Deadite from Evil
He
Dead.
does. He does look like he looks like a fucking massive Deadite.
Yeah.
He, I think, is in the top 3. There's 3 ghosts in this movie
Yeah.
that really stand out, which is the Hammer, the Juggernaut, and
The Jackal.
The Jackal. Those 3 are always the top of my mind as far as the scariest ones. But yeah, the ghosts have always carried this movie for me. Like, I don't really care what they did with the rest of the movie. The ghosts would always make this movie stand out in my head because of how fucking. I think they got a guy from K&B to come in and do the ghost for it.
Greg Nicotero also worked on the Ghost as well from when he was with K&B.
Yeah, they're fucking fantastic looking, and this is the first one we get to see, and he looks fucking super scary.
So one of these science guys gets scared as fuck and he takes off running, but he ends up accidentally running into the box, which causes the Juggernaut to go in after him. And when he steps in, the door quickly shuts, trapping him in there, where Dennis watches him beat this dude to death. So now that they got the ghost captured, Dennis goes to sarcastically congratulate Cyrus when he finds that amongst the chaos, Damon got his throat cut and Cyrus caught a piece of scrap metal to the neck, killing him.
I didn't realize this guy is Rafkin's brother, who dies in the box. That's why Rafkin runs up and he's
I
yelling.
did not catch that at all.
Yeah. So I was reading some on the backstory to the Juggernaut. Yeah, so that's Rafkin's brother who's there. And that's why he runs up to the box and he's like begging him to put him down. He's
I did not know that. So after all that, we jump to the Criticos family where we meet Arthur and Jean, who is this very loving couple, and their teenage daughter Kathy and young son Bobby. And at first, everything seems really fucking great, but as the camera pans through the house, we start to hear about this fire that started, where Arthur was able to save the kids, but unfortunately Jean got very injured and ultimately died from her burns. And this has caused Arthur to lose everything, including their house and whatever savings they had, which put him in tons of debt and caused them all to have to move into this really small, shitty apartment. And that is where we pick up this story. And the first thing that I want to bring up is, what is the deal with this little kid and his obsession with death? Why is he recording himself reporting it? Like, does his friends listen to his murder show at school? Like, what is going on here?
He invented podcasting.
He was the first ever true crime podcaster.
He was.
Look at that.
Hats
Holy
off
shit.
to this kid.
Yep. So we start out at breakfast in this shitty apartment where we see Kathy, Bobby, Arthur, and their nanny, whose name is Maggie, sitting around the table when suddenly a man knocks on the door. And when Arthur opens it, the man informs him that he is a lawyer named Ben Moss who represents his uncle Cyrus's estate. And this is where we find out that Arthur didn't really know his uncle very well, stating that he only met him a few times as a kid, and his father always told him that everyone hated Cyrus because he squandered the family fortune. So the lawyer, who I want to point out looks really uncomfortable being in the presence of poor people, tells them that he has a video message that Cyrus recorded for Arthur in the event of his demise. He then opens the laptop and hits play, where we see Cyrus pop up on the screen and begin talking. So in this message, Cyrus basically says that he feels really bad about not getting to know his nephew and his family, and in order to make things right about being a piece of shit uncle, he is giving them his very unique house and everything in it. So once the video ends, the excited family immediately asks when they can see it, and the lawyer says that he is heading there after work, and the family is more than welcome to follow him out there. But he does warn them that Cyrus liked his privacy, so the place is a couple hours away, in the middle of nowhere with the closest neighbor miles away. So next we get a quick scene of them following the lawyer out to the house while we hear some edgy early 2000s music. This scene really reminds me of the House on Haunted Hill scene where they're all riding in the limos to the house.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I know that movie, it's like Sweet Dreams by Marilyn Manson's playing, but they're very similar scenes. So while they are driving out there, we also get a quick little cut of Kalina gathering some ghost supplies. And if you got an eagle eye, you will notice that she reaches into a drawer and grabs ghost drawing spells and leaves behind the containment spells, giving you a little hint on her intentions later on.
Yeah. Yeah, good eye.
Yep. So once they finally arrive, they are shocked to find this all glass house with the same writing etched into the glass that we saw on the ghost box. And it is surrounded by woods, and we do hear Arthur make the dad joke, rule number 1, no throwing stones. Gotta have that joke.
Man, this the whole beginning of this movie is just my dream. I just keep waiting for some lawyer to knock on the door and tell me that somebody left me a huge mansion and they like their privacy, so I'd take the ghost. Fuck it. I'll take the ghost. You give me 12 ghosts in a house. I'll take it.
As long as they stay in the basement. So as they are standing outside looking at this house, super excited, they see a man in an orange jumpsuit that did not escape from jail, walking around the home with a flashlight. And we notice that this is actually Dennis, the psychic guy from earlier. So he is claiming to be a worker from the power company looking to get into the house because it has caused this huge power outage in the surrounding area. Did you catch a look at his ID card?
I did not.
Okay, so the company is just called Power and Light.
That's
not even Power and Lights, just Power and Light. It only has his last name, and the division he works for is called Surge Tracer.
He didn't get paid yet, man. He didn't have a lot of money to spend on a fake ID.
Did not put a lot of effort into
Vistaprint did not exist back then.
They have a whole department for power outages.
Yeah.
They must have a lot.
And they give out prison uniforms that apparently second-hand prison uniforms at that.
So the lawyer's like, fuck off, that's not our problem. But Arthur, being the nice guy that he is, invites Dennis inside to look at the breaker and see what is wrong. He then places this very unique key into a very fancy and dramatic lock, which kind of starts up the house, where we see the lights come on, the panels start to move around on their own, and more importantly, starts a timer on this big machine down in the basement. So once they head inside, we see that all the walls in this place are made of glass with that weird writing all over them. We also see that Cyrus has a lot of his old collectibles set up everywhere, kind of like a museum. There's a lot of very cool stuff here, and I want to bring it up to you. I think the reason that this is set up like this is because you remember that he was telling us that the original setting for the movie was not the glass house, but it was a fucking museum of history.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think that was the original setting for the movie. I think that's where we first meet Kalina, is that he's working.
Yeah, they're professors at this history of museum. And I know that I think the movie also ended at the museum because they talked about the ending on the steps. But the museum was part of it because there's multiple different stories of this. But I think that kind of carried over into the glass house with everything set up like a museum.
Well, you notice he talks about Kalina working there, and we know in the story that Kalina and Cyrus are actually much closer than you would think. So would Kalina live at this house as well, or have part in the decoration of this? I will say, if I walked into this house, my first thought would be, how much can I sell this thing for?
Honestly, yeah, of course. Especially when you're pretty broke already as it is.
I would be like, some billionaire will buy this as just an art piece alone, how it is. This house is super cool, but I do not want to live in a glass house at all.
No.
Especially not with Latin written all over the walls. I know some billionaire will pay a fucking hefty, like, marked up price for it being a piece of art, and I'll just buy a nice regular house.
So, one of the most important things they find is this very large room with these big circles on the floors. These circles are basically they're one big circle, kind of like rings on a tree. And as of right now, only the center is spinning. And this becomes very important throughout the movie because we also see that these rings are engraved with these ancient symbols. And we already know that these symbols are the Black Zodiac, aka the 12 ghosts Cyrus and Dennis captured. So the lawyer and Arthur head to the library to sign the papers for the house, and despite him telling the gang to stay put, they immediately take off to go explore the home. Next up, we see that Dennis has found the basement where he immediately starts getting these sudden migraines, and this is where he discovers that the ghost containment boxes are all stored down here, and they are definitely not empty. Once he figures this out, he immediately runs upstairs and into the library, interrupting Arthur signing the papers to tell him that he's not really from the power company. His name is Dennis, and he used to hunt ghosts with his uncle Cyrus. And Arthur, who's kind of in shock at all this information, pauses for a moment and says, "You hunted goats?" Which,
That would be
Yeah.
my first thought too.
You hunted goats?
Like, I would think that even if I was pretty sure I heard him say ghosts,
Yeah.
I would say goats.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
I know this guy's weird and all, but goat hunting?
Yeah. So as Dennis goes into try and explain all this, we can see that Arthur doesn't believe any of it and thinks this guy is crazy as fuck. And despite this, Dennis begs him to get himself and his children out of the house immediately. So while trying to convince Arthur to leave, he then gets another sudden headache, which is so severe that it puts him on the floor, causing Arthur to run over and try to help him. And when he touches Dennis's shoulder, we see Dennis get a vision of Arthur's wife's death and the fire, which that doesn't seem too important now, but it will come into play later on.
Yeah, it's very clear that Mr. Rafkin here is very rattled by
Yeah,
this
yeah.
vision. Like, this completely calms him down, changes his entire kind of like makes him wake up out of this freak out that he's having. I would think that this guy was crazy as fuck, but not so much on the hunting ghosts, but the fact that he said that they're all locked in the basement.
Yeah,
I
because
would
a
be
lot,
like,
you know,
okay, I could see him being into like ghost hunting.
well, there's TV shows like that's
Yeah.
become really normal. I don't know how normal it was in 2001. I mean, it wasn't like crazy people talk or anything, but we have seen a lot more ghost shows come out and just kind of just people that don't even believe in ghosts will sometimes watch ghost shows just for the entertainment.
They still
Um,
had like Ed and the Rainborn,
Yeah,
and they were
yeah.
still writing books. And I'd be like, okay, this guy's mega rich, and he likes to go like look for proof of ghosts.
He likes to go
but
find goats.
the fact that this guy's got 12 goats locked in the basement is pretty fucking weird.
Somebody needs to come out with a movie, 13 Goats.
Are they all like Black Phillip? Is that why he's like, we got to get the fuck out of here?
Well, the Juggernaut goat is like that, but there's just different kinds of goats.
You have the goat with the cage around his head. he's the he's the Charles Manson of ghosts.
Oh, man. Okay, so once he finally recovers, Arthur helps him up, and this is where they both... I should just title the episode 13 Goats and see how long it takes somebody to correct me.
I'm sure there would be like 50 people on there like, you're a fucking idiot.
First person to correct me wins these 10 movies. But once he finally recovers, Arthur helps him up, and this is where they both realize that they can't get through it. I'm just picturing a cover. Just a bunch of goats. Oh, man. Where am I at? So once he finally recovers, I can't recover.
Can't recover, clearly.
I'm just picturing a goat with railroad spikes rammed into him. A goat in a stock.
Goat with some big old fake titties all slashed up.
Somebody's like strangling a goat.
It's like beach ball udders.
Oh, let's try this again. So once he recovers, Arthur helps him up, and this is where they both realize that the lawyer, Ben, has disappeared. He went down to pet the goats. We then jump to the basement where we see Ben put on his goat glasses as he walks through the middle of all the ghost boxes, kind of taunting some. Fuck.
We might have to pause for a minute.
All right. We're back, and we took a break to
Took a bathroom break.
to hopefully get all the goats out of the system. So he's kind of taunting some of these ghosts and heading towards the main room of this mystery machine. He then walks over to the control panel where we see all of these gears and levers with the Black Zodiac symbols on them, and he picks up a large briefcase full of cash. Now, he doesn't notice it, but we see that when he removed the case full of money, it released a lever which starts this big-ass machine. We then get a quick overhead shot of the big room with the rings where we see that not just the center is spinning now, but also the first 3 Zodiac rings. So basically, what he has done here is unknowingly started up this machine, which controls the whole house.
He said, I know somebody's going to come for this fucking money.
Yeah. And this also places these metal covers all over the outside, trapping everyone in, and starts slowly opening the the ghost boxes, releasing them into the place, and Ben has no idea any of this is happening. And the first ghost that gets released is the angry princess goat, which is a formerly very attractive woman who is now very dead looking, very naked, and has open wounds all over her body. And as Ben is attempting to flee with the money, he runs right into her while she's holding a big-ass butcher knife. So Ben, who still has his ghost glasses on, sees her coming right for him, and he begins backing up in fear, apologizing for the shit that he said earlier.
He told her she had nice tits.
Yeah, but then he makes a joke, like a lawyer joke, like, what happened, bad representation or something, you know?
He talked some shit.
Yeah. So he's backing up, apologizing, when suddenly 2 glass panels slam shut with him dead smack in the middle of them. We see Ben get a horrified look on his face as he stands perfectly still, when we then start to see his glasses fall off, small drops of blood drip from the side of his head, and his tie fall to the floor. And then the front of his body begins to slowly slide down this glass, revealing the back half of his body still stuck to the glass. And this is where we find out that when these glass doors slam shut, it very cleanly cut Ben in 2, separating his front half from his back half. And this looks fucking awesome.
Yeah, I love the skill. The practical effects look incredible. Like when his front half slides down, you can see the inside half of his brain cut in half. And
like his eye sockets and
yeah, everything's like anatomically correct inside of his head. Like you can see the sockets where the eye generally projects the image onto your brain. And anybody who's ever seen like the body museums or anything like that,
Expo, yeah,
you realize they obviously did their homework before they did this scene.
Well, It's just my opinion, so don't come at me all crazy. But my opinion is it's not just the best kill of this movie. This is one of the best kills of the early 2000s in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree that it is the best kill of the movie for me. I'm sorry to spoil that for later, but yeah, I would put it up there with the top kills.
So next we meet up with Kathy, who is obsessed with her new bedroom, and more specifically, the bathroom that comes with it. And we see that she is washing her face in the sink, but what she can't see is that the walls and everything else are covered in this ghost blood because the angry princess is now in there with her. We do get this super cool scene where Kathy opens up the shower curtain, revealing the angry princess lying in a tub full of blood, which she can't see. And we also get this overhead shot where there is blood splatter everywhere, and the words "I'm sorry" are written in blood on the floor. Very cool scene.
And this scene was one of the main scenes that have always stuck out in my head from the first time watching it when I was like fucking probably 6 or 7. I think I was around 7. I don't know if it's like the boobs or the blood or the fact that she just doesn't know, but it always stuck out in my head always stuck out in my head. And then rewatching it, man, it's still, I think it's one of the coolest scenes of the movie.
Yeah, it looks
Like,
awesome. There's blood splatter everywhere.
yeah, the angry princess being in the tub full of blood, and you getting this shot through the glasses of just blood splatter all over the place, and it's on these like very white, bright colors behind the blood, which just makes it stand out. So it looks awesome from a cinematography perspective. But then the fact that Kathy had literally no idea that she's like rinsing her face out with this water, and the angry princess is literally in this tub full of blood, just like giving her this fucking look. It's super creepy.
So, Kathy is again washing her face in the tub water while the ghost is watching her while sitting in the blood water. And right as she raises her knife to stab her, Arthur bangs on the door, yelling at Kathy for not waiting downstairs like he said. He then asks where Bobby is, and she says that he is with Maggie, but Maggie walks up behind Arthur and says that they got separated while racing through the house. So now that shit has popped off and they desperately need to leave, this little fucking kid is missing in this glass house that has shifted around so much, it's basically turning into kind of a maze.
This is what happens when you let your fucking stupid kid bring a scooter to
The
a
old
house.
scooters.
To a house that you don't even quite own yet.
Yeah.
You haven't even signed the papers. Like, what house other than this would you ever think that a kid riding a scooter around would be a good idea in?
Well, from Arthur's point of view, he did hire someone whose job is specifically to watch him, but unfortunately for Arthur, I think he kind of hired the worst babysitter ever.
Yeah.
He does not a good job at watching him at all.
She does suck at being a nanny, but from a dad's perspective, I would be like, fuck no, leave the scooter in the car. You're not taking the scooter in. At no point while we're meeting with this lawyer are you going to be riding a scooter around in this mansion. Sorry.
So we then jump over to Bobby, who is still riding his scooter through the hallway when suddenly he sees 2 glass doors to the basement open up and begins hearing a voice call for him to come down and play. But as he starts down the steps, we then hear another woman's voice say, "Don't come down here, Bobby," to which he ignores and continues to the basement. Also, it is important to note that Bobby found a pair of the ghost glasses upstairs and is now wearing them because he thinks they're cool, I guess. So he will be able to see the ghosts.
It's also super, super important to the story if you really pay attention that voice that says, "Don't come down here, Bobby," plays a crucial role in the story. And you don't really, unless you're watching this a second time, really catch on to why that voice says what it says.
So once he finally reaches the basement floor where all the ghost boxes are kept, we get a quick shot of the machine where we see a couple of levers flip up, opening multiple boxes. Back upstairs, we see Kathy, Arthur, Maggie, and Dennis all looking for Bobby when Dennis finally tells them that because the glass is shatterproof and soundproof, Bobby isn't going to be able to hear them calling. He then informs them that the writing all over the glass are these containment spells that the ghosts cannot cross. And this is the first time that Maggie and Kathy are hearing about all this ghost stuff, and Kathy definitely doesn't believe any of it. They missed a really good opportunity for her to be like, goats? Yeah.
Containing goats?
So, down in the basement, Bobby is exploring when he suddenly turns around to find the bound woman standing behind him, which of course causes him to freak out and take off on his scooter. But right as he turns a corner, he crashes the scooter into a wall, falling to the floor, and right as he sits up, he sees the torso's head wrapped in plastic screaming at him with the torso's body crawling in his direction, which would scare the fuck out of me. As an adult, that would scare the fuck out of me.
Yeah, for some reason, I had forgotten about the torso's existence, and I don't know why, but why I didn't remember this, but yeah, the scene of the torso like crawling around on his hands was fucking super creepy.
Yeah. So we then jump back to the group still looking for Bobby. When Arthur goes to head down to the basement to look, Dennis then attempts to tell him definitely not go down there. But Arthur makes a deal with him. If he helps him find Bobby, then he will pay him whatever Arthur owes him. And after thinking about it for a moment, he agrees.
He told him he'd pay him more. Pay him more on top of that.
He's going to get something.
Rathkin will literally do anything for money. This dude will suck a dick for money.
Probably.
Because he went from being petrified to being like, all right, get out of my way. I'm going to lead the way. Money is enough to make this man do anything.
So
like, he knows what's down here. He's seen these ghosts like literally murder people that he worked with.
He does think they're all locked up.
Yeah, but he's still petrified. Like, he's still petrified when he goes down there and realizes that this has essentially become a farm for all these ghosts.
Well,
not goats.
Well, we also know too, we'll find out later on, it's not just about money because he feels really bad about something after Arthur touched him, right? So he even admits like, yeah, there's another reason why I'm trying to help.
Yeah, but he's also like, fuck no, we're not going down there. And then as soon as the money gets brought up, he's like, literally his words are, all right, get out of my way.
So we then jump back to Bobby, who we see has knocked himself out by running full speed into a glass wall. And when he comes to, he hears a familiar voice talking to him through that little recording device thing that he carries around for his murder podcast. And she says that he needs to get out of the basement now and to put the glasses back on. And as he places the glasses over his eyes, he spots his mother half burnt in a hospital gown, informing him to go upstairs and find his father. And this kind of freaks Bobby out, causing him to back up into another glass wall. And when he turns around, he sees Cyrus's ghost standing there looking down at him with this huge slice over his neck and blood-soaked shirt. And before he gets a chance to run away, someone comes up from behind and snatches him up. So next we see the gang has arrived down in the basement where Arthur says that this is going to take too long and they need to split up. He then sends Dennis and Maggie one way and him and Kathy another way. So Maggie starts asking Dennis about the goat stuff and tells her that if she doesn't believe him, to put the glasses on and see for herself.
Bro, you said the goat stuff.
Did I?
You gotta get that right.
Oh, man. So when she does this, I gotta go back. When I go to edit this, I gotta check and see if I did that.
No, you did. You definitely did.
I told you it was gonna be a problem. So she puts the glasses on for herself, and when she does, she says that she doesn't see anything. And this is where Dennis realizes that some of the boxes have been opened. He then finds a box that is still closed, and he shows Maggie this, where she sees the angry ghost called the Hammer, who was a very large blacksmith who was murdered by racist townfolk by tying him to a tree and impaling him with a bunch of railroad spikes. They also cut off one of his hands and replaced it with his blacksmith hammer. This is, like we were saying earlier, one of the 3 extremely violent and destructive ghosts. There's 2 more that we kind of have mentioned. Well, one of them is the one in the beginning of the Junkyard, and then the Jackal, which we haven't quite got to the Jackal yet. But
Yeah, you could take a bunch of railroad spikes and drive them in just about anybody, even a little person, and if they were a ghost, they would be fucking creepy. But when you take this big ass motherfucker on top of that, yeah, this dude's horrifying.
bro,
Although if it was a little person, the hammer would be
be a little hammer.
it'd be a lot less terrifying.
Dude, when he pulls the fucking spike out of his shoulder, that looks awesome.
It looks awesome and it's fucking creepy.
So this guy, I didn't write his name down, the actor who plays the Hammer, he was originally brought in just for them to kind of play around with the look of the Hammer until they actually hired an actor to do it. And he ended up looking so badass that they hired him to play the part, which is really interesting. The one thing that drives me fucking nuts with this movie, though, it's hard to really see the detail of the ghost because they constantly do the flashy, quick editing effect, and I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, that is one of my 2 major complaints about this entire movie is the way it was shot and the quick camera angles and the flashy, like, quick back and forth. You've heard me complain about this about many other movies.
Yeah.
Like 30 Days at Night did it a lot. It's what a lot of modern day ghost movies do, which drives me nuts, is the, like, quick, they'll take 5 different camera angles and they'll flash back and forth between them and make it, like, super flashy, and you don't ever get to see anything in actual detail. I think it takes away from the scariness. And C Ernst Harth, actually, I seen him describe it as being shot like a music video. And I think that's a very, very good way to describe it.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts too.
Yeah, so, like, one thing they'll do is you get a character, they put the glasses on, and they see the ghost, but then they'll do a flash, and the ghost disappears, and I'm like, look, man, if you're showing us the perspective of someone with the ghost glasses on, they should be able to constantly see the ghost, which it seems like in the movie they can. They're not getting this flashy, weird effect that we are seeing. So why do we keep switching back to glasses, no glasses, like in a half a second intervals?
Yeah, I don't get why, like, all the movies that do this, like a lot of modern day paranormal ghost movies do this, and it makes it a lot less scary to me. A lot of Exorcist movies do
Yeah.
it, like in the climax when they're, having their full-on exorcism moments, whatever you want to call that. And I always reference the original Exorcist. That was so much scarier because they didn't do that. Like, give us the perspective of standing in the room with this. Like, if you have done your job and you've made that person possessed enough and creepy enough like they did Reagan in the original Exorcist, it is 100 times more scary to literally just feel like you're standing in the room than to get all these crazy camera angles and you can't ever actually focus on anything. And
It's so hard to see this awesome detail on every one of these ghosts because they do it every time. We go back and, to the very beginning in the Junkyard when the Juggernaut is walking towards us and and it's constantly doing that. You almost have to, like, pause the movie or look up some stills of the movie to really see the detail of the ghost because it's constantly flashy. And I hate that. Hate it, hate it, hate it. I hate it as much as I hate them plastic jackets in the beginning. The Zach Baggins outfits. Zach
It
Baggins hunts goats.
reminds me of like some shit that would be on like Scare Tactics.
Yeah.
Like a paranormal research group that they would set up on Scare Tactics to scare somebody. Like,
surprised-
this is what they would wear.
I'm surprised Ghost Adventures doesn't do this. This is a very Ghost Adventures thing that they would do.
Zach Baggins is going to come out with glasses that you can see ghosts with.
So after finally getting someone to believe him, Maggie said it is time to move on. And as they are walking away, Dennis turns around and flicks the hammer off. And when he does this, he gets a vision of himself being brutally murdered by the hammer and another ghost in the house. Next, we check in with Arthur and Kathy, where they end up finding Bobby's recorder and glasses. And when Arthur rewinds and hits play on the recorder, they hear Bobby's screams through the speaker. Kathy attempts to comfort him a bit and then says that maybe Dennis is right about what's going on. But Arthur, who is now very pissed off, tells her to stop and there is no such thing as ghosts, which prompts her to put on Bobby's glasses. And when she does this, the motherfucking jackal is standing right in front of her. Now, the jackal, which is my personal favorite ghost, is, as Dennis describes him, the Charlie Manson of ghosts. He was placed in an asylum for the criminally insane, put in a straitjacket, and had a steel cage placed around his head. One night there was a fire that burnt down the asylum, where everyone else escaped except for the man known as the Jackal. He is also one of our 3 extremely violent ghosts that we've talked about a couple times now.
Yeah, he is and always has been, and it's for this scene coming up, but always been my personal favorite. As you know, I have a life-size bust of him in my living room. Definitely creepy as fuck. I never remembered the reference of him being like the Charles Manson of ghosts. Maybe because when I was 7, I didn't really know who Charles Manson was. But even watching this movie later on, I didn't remember that reference, but I think it's a good reference.
Yeah. So the jackal tackles Kathy to the ground and starts dragging her down the hallway. And this is where Arthur turns around to see his daughter sliding down the hallway on her back, obviously being attacked by some invisible force. Once they reach the end of the hallway, he jacks her up against the wall and begins scratching her deep all over her body. Arthur eventually kind of snaps out of this and runs to help her, but considering it's a ghost and he doesn't have glasses, he can't see him. So he ends up grabbing Kathy's legs and trying to pull her away, but the jackal won't let go. And then suddenly, Kalina comes walking around the corner holding this ghost repellent flare, which scares the jackal off for the time being. Kalina and Arthur then grab Kathy's legs and start pulling her down the hallway to safety as the jackal chases behind them, until a glass door finally closes, trapping the jackal on the other side.
Man, the shot of her, from her perspective, of her being dragged through the hallway and the jackal chasing her, especially when he comes around that corner, that is the number one scariest scene that always stuck with me in this movie, was that very shot.
And it's also one of the most stillest shots, so the best look of the jackal, because they don't do so much flashy.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very, very scary goat.
So after this, Arthur's like, "Who the fuck are you?" And Kalina introduces herself and says that she is here to set all the trapped souls free. Arthur then takes Kathy's glasses and finally gets to see what the jackal looks like, and he's pretty shocked. So she then pulls...
Yeah, needless to say, if I seen that, I'd be pretty fucking shocked too.
I would shit my pants.
Yeah, I would immediately be like, okay, I know I said it before, but we gotta get the fuck out of this house. You know, fuck this little kid.
So
Fuck this kid. I told him not to bring the scooter in the house. We're getting the fuck out of here.
So she then pulls out her book and tells Arthur and us what exactly is going on here. She says that this book was written by an astrologer in the 15th century who was possessed by a demon and contains plans for a machine designed by the devil and powered by the dead. And that is why Cyrus was collecting all of these ghosts for. Arthur then says that he doesn't give a fuck about any of that. He just wants to get his kids out of here. And Kalina says that she came to set the ghost free, and if he wants to get out, he's got to help her do that first. Arthur agrees, and when he turns around to talk to Kathy, he finds that she has vanished. So there is no fucking way somebody snuck up from behind and snatched her without Arthur seeing or hearing this. She was literally like 6 inches away.
No, but Kalina would have seen it, because
Still, like, I just don't think. I mean, she wasn't even like knocked out. Like, she would have yelled or something. Like, I feel like they should have made her disappear another way.
I agree. Especially they're in like this glass that's apparently soundproof, so it's like completely silent.
Yeah.
Except them talking. Yeah. Apparently there's a ninja ghost.
Yeah. So we then jump back on over to Dennis and Maggie, where we see them running from the angry princess, where they end up getting separated by a shifting glass wall. And right as the wall is closing shut, Dennis tosses his pair of glasses over to Maggie, leaving him with no way to see the ghost. And right as she puts the glasses on, we see Dennis get attacked by the Torn Prince, who was a popular high school baseball player in the 40s, who was pretty much an asshole and a narcissist who ended up dying in a drag race. So he begins beating Dennis with his baseball bat until Maggie starts yelling out directions on how to avoid the prince's swings until he is finally able to escape through a rotating glass door.
You know, I thought that this glass was soundproof.
It's only the pieces that they need to be soundproof.
They forgot the soundproof that piece of glass.
Yep. We then jump back over to Kalina and Arthur, who are now being chased by the Hammer and the Jackal when they realize that they must climb up the first floor and get out of the basement by removing a glass panel because the stairs are blocked off by these two crazy-ass ghosts. We also see that a now reunited Dennis and Maggie have also made their way up to the first floor, but they still only have one set of glasses. And while walking down the hallway, Dennis spots two more ghosts, which are known as the Dire Mother and the Great Child, who is played by our friend C Ernst Harth.
Yeah, there's something inherently creepy about a man baby, especially a giant, nearly 7 foot tall, 400-pound baby.
Yeah.
But it's even worse when he's dead, covered in puke, and holding the hand of his tiny dead mom.
Yep. So their story is back in the day, carnival worker Margaret, who is a little person, was raped by the tall man. And she had this child who, despite his large size and age, mentally stayed a child, which caused Margaret and her son to be relentlessly teased by the other carnival workers. Then, one day, Margaret was kidnapped as a joke, and when Harold finally found her, she had suffocated to death in a burlap sack. Harold then went into a rage and brutally murdered all of the carnival workers and put the remains on display for paying customers. Soon after, an angry mob captured and executed Harold for the crimes he committed. We talked about the show, doing the backstories and stuff. I would love to see this. I would love to see him chop up all of these other, freak show workers and then display their bodies. That would be great. That's like American Horror Story freak show type shit.
Yeah, that would be great. We got to learn some of the original backstory, like the original script backstory with these two. And man, there was some wild shit that they were initially going to go with. One of them was originally like they were into some, I guess, incestual BDSM, in that he essentially gets smothered and then rolls over onto her tiny ass and kills her by smothering her in the midst of some BDSM mother-son sex.
Yeah,
So I'm glad they wrote that out of the story.
Th-
That's a little, that's kind of fucked up even for a goat movie.
this movie was the plot was different, the characters were different in so many different ways, the ghosts were different in so many different ways. A very interesting conversation we had about this movie. So after Dennis and Maggie see this, they then turn and run the other direction when they suddenly come across Kalina and Arthur coming up through the floor. So they are now all finally reunited. And just in time, too, because we see that almost all of the rings in the big room are now spinning. 2 more levers flip up, causing 2 more cages to open. So we then fast forward a little bit and we see the group following Kalina to the room that houses the machine when suddenly Arthur gets attacked by the jackal. Thankfully, though, Dennis runs over and grabs Kalina's flare and throws it over by Arthur, scaring the jackal off for now. As they help him up and they go to run down the hallway, they get cut off by the Pilgrimess, who was a woman living in the late 1700s who was accused of witchcraft by the townfolk after a sudden illness started killing people and livestock. After trying to set her house on fire, she walked out unscathed with no injuries, prompting the townspeople to place her in the stocks until she finally died of starvation. I say that she also looks like a deadite.
Yeah,
Kind of looks like Cheryl.
Forgot the Pilgrimess completely.
There's a lot of ghosts that you forget because you got the main, 5 bad ones always in your head, but yeah.
Yeah, I completely forgot I forgot about the Pilgrimess completely, and which is crazy considering how fucking scary she's almost like a female jackal without the cage, and I would say that she may be in the top 5 creepiest looking ghosts in the movie, and that sparked an idea. I know that we have been talking about doing some video content outside of the movies with obviously the first video interview coming up this week. And I think that we should do a ranking of the
ghosts.
13, I would say 13 with 12 ghosts.
There's 12, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can include the 13th.
Yeah.
We haven't got to him yet, but
yeah, well, he's going to be 13
he's
for
gonna
sure.
be last.
He's worse than that fucking kid with the arrow in his head.
She really, really reminds me of the Cheryl at the end of the original Evil Dead. Very similar looking.
Yeah, I really want to do a ranking video on that because I feel like she may be top 5, but she's got to be close to it if not.
So once they realize she is blocking the way they need to go, they end up choosing a different direction, which leads them into the library where they can now take a rest and regroup. Now, remember, Dennis and Kalina, they know each other, and we found out in the beginning of the movie that they're on 2 different sides of this fence. So once they get into the library, they start arguing after Kalina says that this is all Dennis's fault, which is, kind of true. So after...
I would say this is all Cyrus's fault. I wouldn't put this on the hired psychic.
Yeah, but Cyrus would have never been able to put the ghost in here without Dennis.
He would have just hired a different psychic.
Maybe
he would have called
one.
up Chip Coffee. Chip Coffee would have been like, somebody call.
So after this goes on for a bit, a very injured Arthur tells them both to shut up and for Kalina to cut Dennis some slack. And this is where Kalina drops a bomb on everyone as she looks over at Dennis and says, "You didn't tell him, did you?" And Arthur's like, "Tell me what?" And Dennis begs Kalina to stop and that Arthur doesn't need to know this information, but it is too late now because the cat is out of the bag. Arthur then looks at Kalina and asks her what she is talking about, and she then says that Dennis helped Cyrus capture the 4th ghost 6 months ago at St. Luke's Hospital, revealing to Arthur that his wife's spirit is trapped in this house. And that is why we saw her talking to Bobby in the basement earlier.
Which is also the voice to Bobby before he went to the basement. That was the ghost telling him not to come down there.
And this news, of course, causes Arthur to break down when Dennis then says, I didn't know you, I didn't know her, and I had no idea she had a husband. When suddenly Arthur punches Dennis in the mouth.
I think this punch is uncalled for.
I was literally going to say, like, I don't know how I would react in this situation. Like, I know I would be upset, but I would like to think I would be a little understanding with the fact that it would be hard for him to know that information at that time.
Yeah, he didn't know his wife. He didn't know
No, he
Arthur.
just
Like
thinks she's a ghost.
like even after he kind of finds it out after Arthur touches him and he has that vision. I mean, I think he's right, and when he tells Kalina, like, no, he doesn't need to know that. Like, I wouldn't tell somebody that either. I would think they don't need to know that. Like, that's just gonna upset somebody. So, yeah, I don't think you can blame him at all. This is not his fault. It's not like he was friends with Arthur and he trapped his dying wife while they were friends and just didn't tell him about it. He didn't know any of these people. So, yes, the punch was uncalled for.
So after this, Kalina tells Arthur that he can survive, he can save his wife's soul and his kids' lives if he listens to her. She opens the book and begins explaining the machine, the Black Zodiac, and how it all works. So once the ghosts are all released from their cages, they are going to be summoned to the center of the house, which is where we see those ring things spinning around, where they then add their energy to the machine, powering it up, which then will open the Ocularis Infernum, which is Latin for the eye of hell. And what's important about this is in hell, apparently, there is an eye that can see everything like the past, the future, heaven, and earth. And the man who controls the Ocularis would be the most powerful man that ever existed. So this machine only needs 12 ghosts to turn on, but Dennis then interrupts by saying that Damon said something about a 13th ghost. Kalina then explains that the 13th ghost is not required because it is a failsafe, because if you wanted to stop the process for some reason, a person would have to sacrifice themselves to the machine out of pure love, making Arthur the 13th ghost because he would be sacrificing himself by jumping into the eye in order to save his kids. Now, I'm going to come back to this later because I noticed something here that I had never noticed before.
Yeah, if I was Arthur, for one, going back to the whole like reveal that it's his wife, I would ask Kalina how the fuck she knew that. Like, what? How do you know that woman down there was my wife? Like, how do you know my backstory? That's a little sketchy. Like, you know a little more than what you should.
He's probably in shock, though. He's not thinking of the details.
Or you would think Rafkin would be like, well, how the fuck do you know if I didn't know?
He's got a headache.
Yeah, and also, if Cyrus was so obsessed with opening this like hell's eye, why would he have a failsafe there? Like, why would he have a failsafe? That wouldn't make any sense. So I would also question that.
Well, he didn't design it. So he
didn't design it, but the 13th ghost is only a failsafe to stop it. It's the only thing that can stop it. And if he dedicated all this money and all this time to collecting these ghosts, why would he make sure that there was a failsafe there? And even call it the 13th ghost.
Yeah.
If it was really only there to stop the machine.
So both Dennis and Maggie are like, fuck that, you can't kill yourself to stop this machine. When Kalina then says, or we can do it the old-fashioned way, as she dumps out her bag, revealing a bunch of dynamite in C4. So apparently you can also just blow this fucking thing up. So Dennis starts telling Arthur that he can't just kill himself without trying to see if there's a better way, but Arthur shuts this down, saying that all he can think about is saving his kids. When Dennis then says, well, before we settle on a plan, me and you can go back out there and look for them one last time, to which Arthur agrees. So they end up coming up with a really smart idea here, where they actually remove one of the glass panels that had the containment spell etched on it, and they carry it with them just in case they come across any ghosts. Once they got it in hand, Arthur and Dennis head out with Maggie and Kalina heading back downstairs with the explosives.
You can definitely shield off a lot of goats with a glass panel.
Yep.
One thing I don't understand is the second time in the movie that they've removed the glass panel. What is the point of all these doors and stuff locking them into places if the goddamn panel's removed that easy?
Where did they get the screwdriver to remove the panel? Because it's not just magically hanging there on its own. So once they reach the basement, Kalina opens the door to the machine where we see this huge set of gears and cogs spinning around very fast.
The Lion's Gate opening symbol.
Yeah. And while Maggie stares up in disbelief, she turns to her right where she sees Cyrus's ghost approaching her. She attempts to scare him off with the flare, but it seems to not be having an effect, when suddenly, Kalina knocks Maggie out by hitting her in the head with the book and removing her ghost glasses, revealing that not only is Cyrus not really dead, but also he and Kalina are a couple as they share a kiss. So that bitch has been working for Cyrus the whole time.
Which would explain why she knew about Arthur's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that she's a cunt. That's all we can
accurate.
say. She is very pathetic in this scene as well.
So, despite their romantic makeout session, we pretty quickly see here that Cyrus treats Kalina like absolute shit as he begins demanding the summoning spells, which he quickly hands over. We then see Dennis and Arthur use the glass panel to fight off the torn prince, but quickly realize that they are in deep shit as they turn and see the hammer heading right for them. But Dennis has actually seen this exact situation before because remember, he had the vision when he gave the hammer the bird. So he knows what to do as he immediately pushes Arthur into a corner and blocks him in with the glass, causing the hammer to attack him only. The hammer then starts swinging at Dennis, who at first is able to dodge the hits, causing sparks to shoot everywhere, but this doesn't last long as we see the last glass door slide open, revealing the Juggernaut, who heads straight for Dennis. And we then pretty much watch Dennis get tag teamed by the hammer and the Juggernaut, who eventually picks Dennis up over his head and snaps his body in two by slamming him against the corner of a wall, killing him.
And what is kind of significant about this kill is in the very beginning of the movie, the Juggernaut is who kills Dennis's brother.
Yeah.
And he looks him in the face through the glass when he's telling him to stop, put him down after he kills his brother. Those two stare each other off in the face. And it ended up being the Juggernaut who ultimately killed Dennis Radkin as well.
What a bastard.
And as much as I will say, he got fucked. He literally got killed by the two biggest, brutalest motherfuckers that you could get. The Jackal is the scariest, but these two
they hurt more.
They definitely can.
One's got a hammer for a hand.
Yeah.
The other one's 9 foot tall.
And literally rips people apart with it.
Yeah.
In his backstory, the first girl he kills, he literally ripped her apart with his hands.
Well, his nickname is Breaker, and they talk about why they call him Breaker because he used to break his victims in two, like he does Dennis. So
yeah.
So after that, the Juggernaut then looks over at a now very scared Arthur, but before he gets a chance to try to attack him, Cyrus puts the summoning spell on the tape player and begins playing it through the whole house, forcing all the ghosts to head to the eye of the machine. And the last ghost to leave is Jean, Arthur's wife, as we see her stop by and see Arthur one last time before she is forced to appear at the eye. As Cyrus and Kalina go to head back up to the first floor, he turns a switch which closes a glass door behind him, trapping Kalina in a glass box that is now slowly closing, which eventually squishes her to death.
in the
Good riddance.
most CGI awful death scene of the movie.
We couldn't get a little flash pan of that scene.
Yeah, flash pan or maybe just some fake blood like squirted out, like something. I mean, you put all this money into practical effects and characters, and then and the set. We ain't even got to
Yeah.
that, and you give us this like she is a rotten bitch. Like that's all I can say. Like once you get that reveal, she is a rotten ass bitch, and we don't get any satisfaction out of her death because they did it in really bad CGI. So that is a big complaint.
Arthur then heads to the main room where the eye is as we start to see some of these ring things like spinning around like saw blades now. And at the center of them sits Kathy and Bobby, who are still alive but trapped by the deadly rings. And as Arthur puts his glasses back on, he sees that all 12 ghosts are standing around this eye with their arms wide open, chanting some Latin shit. And as Bobby begs for his dad's help, Arthur looks over and sees Cyrus, which makes him think there are already 12 ghosts, so why would Cyrus's spirit be here? Which causes him to remove his glasses, where he quickly discovers that he indeed is not a ghost and is a real person and totally not dead. And now that he has put it all together, that Cyrus actually needs him to sacrifice himself as the 13th ghost in order to start the machine. And this is what Damon was saying in the beginning, that even if Cyrus could collect all 12 ghosts, he would never be able to get someone to sacrifice himself in the name of love, becoming the 13th ghost in order to open the eye of hell. And that is why Kalina was bullshitting him in the library, telling him it was the only way to save his kids, when in reality, his sacrifice would save them. It wouldn't save them. It would activate the machine, which is exactly what her and Cyrus wanted. And this is what I was saying. I have never caught that the scene in the library was her bullshitting him.
Yeah.
Never picked up on that.
That's why I said, why would Cyrus do all this to have a failsafe in place? As he's not a failsafe. He's the only way to make the machine actually work.
And this is why he captures the kids, is because he needs to put them in danger for, it would make no sense of why you would even want to fail safe anywhere close to the machine.
Yeah, you would never want that, at least not if you're Cyrus. Yeah, so
and
that's picked up on that. As soon as Kalina kind of does her reveal that she's in on it, you realize what she told him was bullshit. If you really pay attention and count in the beginning of the movie, that thing that spins on the floor, there's 13 spots. There's a spot for a 13th ghost.
Yeah, and this is also why when they're in the library arguing, Dennis keeps saying, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
Somehow that whole scene always went right over my head.
And Kalina did not care about the well-being of ghosts.
No.
What a bitch. She did not really work for Gita.
No,
she didn't.
She didn't.
She's not like walking in there being like, have you even fed this ghost?
No.
Like I can see his rib cage.
Ghost discrimination.
No, she didn't give a fuck about any of it.
Nope. So now that Arthur has this all figured out, he immediately attacks Cyrus and begins hitting him. But Cyrus ends up getting the upper hand on him and knocking Arthur to the ground, calling him a nothing and a loser, and says that Arthur will make that jump into the eye of the machine, and that is why he chose him and his pathetic family. This almost makes me wonder, did Cyrus kill Jean for all this to happen?
I don't know, maybe.
I mean, this is almost...
Did he set their house on fire?
The perfect scenario. Well, we know that Jean dies in the hospital.
She does, but she dies from the result of the fire.
That's what I'm saying, though, is he didn't have to set the fire. He could have just had her poisoned or something in the hospital. Because we know She survived long enough to go to the hospital and be hooked up and all that shit. She literally spends the whole movie walking around with her hospital shit. He could have set the fire and had her killed in the hospital.
He could have.
Yeah.
Or he could have had Kalina do it while she was faking as
Apparently.
a Gita agent.
Yep. So next, Cyrus turns his cane into a sword because doesn't every evil rich guy got a cane sword? It's like a must. They must sell it at the rich guy store.
No, they sell it at the flea market. That's the flea market special. Every flea market knife guy has a cane that is actually a knife.
I have a suspicion that like Jeff Bezos has a sword cane. So yeah, he turns his cane into a sword where he then orders Arthur to get up when suddenly the summoning spell that's playing over the loudspeaker starts fucking up. And we get a quick cut to Maggie, who is now woken up from being knocked out, down in the control room and is messing with the recording equipment and the house controls. And this causes a few things to happen. First, the ghosts disappear from around the eye. Then the outside doors that have trapped everybody inside start randomly opening and closing. And Arthur is able to get the jump on Cyrus. And finally, the machine starts going haywire to the point where it is about to explode. Cyrus, who is now laid out on the ground from the hit by Arthur, is immediately attacked by all the ghosts, where we see them pick him up and throw him into the eye, where he is quickly cut up by all of those rings that are spinning like saw blades. And right before the machine has catastrophic failure, the ghost of Dennis shows up and tells Arthur that it's okay, it's not over yet, and he can still save his kids. Arthur then gets up, walks over to the spinny ring thing, waits for the perfect time, and leaps to the center where he grabs his kids and holds them tight as we start to see the whole place begin exploding around them. After a bunch of explosions, we then get an outside shot of the house pretty much destroyed except for the support beams as all 12 ghosts are finally free and walk off into the woods. Do you think that they go back to where like Dennis and Cyrus found them? Where did they go?
They go wherever they want. They're free.
It's like the genie from Aladdin when he gets the cuffs taken off. One of them's like, I'm going to Disney World.
Wonder what happened to Cyrus's ghost. There's only 12 of them walking out there.
He went straight to hell.
Yeah.
So
also, I just gotta say, Arthur jumping through this thing to be with his kids, and then 2 seconds later, this thing implodes, was absolutely for nothing. It was just for dramatic pause in the movie.
Well, the kids would have been fine,
The kid, yeah.
whether he went in there or not.
I know. So imagine Arthur makes this jump, gets cut into like 50 pieces in front of his kids, 2 seconds before everything implodes, and they're saved anyway.
So I imagine Arthur's going to be like 70 still telling that story about that jump.
Yeah, and his kids are like, but Dad, it
was for nothing.
It was for nothing.
So after the dust starts to settle, we see that despite the destruction, Arthur, Bobby, and Kathy are safe while the ghost of Dennis smiles at them. Bobby then looks up and sees Jean, who now looks normal and is not all burned up or in like hospital stuff. And she smiles and says, I love you guys, before slowly vanishing. And right before the screen goes black, we see a tattered looking Maggie walking through the rubble saying this wasn't in the job description. She's heading back to New York and she quits. And that is the end of 13 Ghosts.
How the fuck did Maggie survive? Bro, this thing blew the entire bulletproof house glass apart. Like every pane of glass in this motherfucker was blown out. Literally, like, she was in the room with it.
She was in the room with all that metal.
Yeah.
And
that exploded.
She hid behind the only actual shatterproof pane of glass in the whole house. I don't know. So now that we are done with the plot, it is time to talk to the great child himself, C Ernst Harth, a fantastic Canadian actor that has been in a ton of movies and TV shows. So are you ready to talk about the whole main reason we are here? 13 Ghosts. All right. So you have a bunch of different versions of scripts of this movie.
Yeah, I went down into the the C Ernst Harth archives and was digging through years and years of stuff. And I've got all my versions. The first production draft was October 3rd, 2000. But my first draft is from August 1st, 2000. And it says a screenplay by Neil Marshall Stevens based on the screenplay by Rob White, which was the first movie. 13 goes from the 60s. Then it says revisions by Steve Beck. And then it says current revisions by Todd Alcott. So there's already 4 people that are responsible for this one. And this is what? 1, 2, 3, at least 4 versions away from the film that you see in the theater. So I've got it marked off, a bunch of things that I went through yesterday that I wanted to share with you, because if you're people who are interested in the actual story of the film, these are things you've never heard or never seen, and I thought were interesting. First of all, the film doesn't open with like a quote on the screen. I don't remember there being a quote.
Opens in it like a junkyard.
Yeah. But here, this is it's blackness. And then we see a title. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious Albert Einstein. I don't remember that being at the beginning of the film. And then it changes to another quote. I do believe in spooks. I do believe in spooks. I do believe in spooks. The Cowardly Lion. I don't remember that either.
That's definitely not.
That's a completely different opening right there.
That's so different.
Completely different. And that's sort of in the beginning of the film as it is now, with Cyrus and them at the beginning of the junkyard. But here it says, in the passenger carriage of a sleek limo, Cyrus Criticos, 50s, upright, calm, alert, balding, expensively dressed, slyly brilliant. His hand rests on a silver-headed cane, which he hasn't. He gazes out the window. It's always fun to see what they kept. He gazes out the window, surveys the desert landscape. So that's different. There's no desert landscape.
No, it's just a junkyard at night. What's
crazy, though, is what you realize is that they didn't really have the backstories fleshed out yet, because as you see in this stack of scripts here, when I first auditioned, it was one character, then it became a different character. Then it was like, not only were there different versions of the scripts, there were different versions of the ghosts within these. So the one thing I brought out here, I wanted to read you, is back here on page 84, which tells you that if you're going to go by the way they usually time a script, we're talking like 84 minutes into the movie. Okay, 1, 2, 3. You're not getting to meet the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th ghost until 84 minutes into the movie in the original
movie.
It's too far.
And not only that, it's what you're meeting. That's like Rafkin winces in pain. This is in the library. Violently convulses as the spirits loose in the house gather around the glass walls of the library. Most of them we recognize from earlier, although now there are some we haven't seen before. Among them, a thick, middle-aged pilgrimess in stocks holding in the crook of one meaty arm what appears at first to be a child. But when the child looks up, we see that it is a dwarfish parasitic twin, a tiny, shriveled version of the woman. Both stare coldly at the seance party. Nearby, a 50s teenage boy whom we see only in profile stares in. As he looks across the room, we see half his grinning face is gone. Next to him, and this is the part I originally auditioned for, is an elderly couch potato, sits, still occupying the litter-strewn sofa he has been glued to for years. Under his pasty skin, something crawls. We follow one of the lumps in his face as it reaches his swollen eye. Then, a sewer rat curiously pokes his head out of the eye, sniffs the air, and returns to join his hundreds of brothers under his shirt. And it goes from there. So those 4 ghosts you don't even meet until 84 minutes in, and they're basically just things in the background, really, as far as the story goes. I mean, that was, as far as I remember, that was basically because I'm in a couch. I can't walk around with a couch stuck to my ass.
Well, your character sounds completely different than the character we know.
My mother is a parasitic twin of the pilgrimess, who at this point is a much thicker, bigger person, and if you look at the Black Zodiac earlier on, it mentions it refers to the sisters And I think that's what they are. And also here, see, the other thing is Maggie, the
So like the babysitter.
nanny,
Yeah.
has a British accent. And Kalina, also it takes place at the Natural Museum of History. There's a lot more work scenes where Arthur is at work as a professor, and Kalina is another professor who he interacts with, and she's a professor of ancient manuscripts. So that's why he goes to her, because the information he got from the lawyer, Ben, about the house comes with all the hieroglyphics and all the stuff, and he doesn't understand what he's looking at. So he tracks her down. He brings her to the house when they go to see the house the first time. And when they're there, a car pulls up, and it's Dennis Rafkin, who's the professor's teacher's assistant and is Cyrus's, his assistant. But the professor, Kalina, recognizes him, and she says, "Oh yeah, that's so-and-so. He works with it." And Ben says, "Yeah, I asked him to meet us here. I need him to sign some papers as well." So that's how they get them all into the house. Whereas in the movie that we have now, he's pretending to be a hydro worker from the he's there about the power grid.
Power or something.
And Kalina doesn't show up until later when she jumps.
She breaks in,
a hole from the ceiling or whatever. And so the other difference is this scene here, and this is the big difference, other than as different as everything is now. So Cyrus, this is later on in the film, Cyrus says, "This goddamn machine is going to change the lives of every man, woman, and child on Earth. The internet is a child's toy compared to the awesome knowledge available from the Ocularis. With this machine, everyone will be able to know anything we need or want. We will end pain, suffering, famine, disease, poverty, depression, war. We will see beyond the stars into heaven's windows, straight into the face of God. And you suggest that that is not worth the price of a few people's lives?" And Rafkin says, "So why am I still alive?" And Cyrus says, "Why? Because I like you. Mouse." And that's another thing. Throughout this version, there are all these tacky one-liners and
yeah, because it's early 2000s, man.
Glad we got rid of the one-liners, but man, that first change that you mentioned of how they got them to the house, I like that backstory so much better.
And then, another line, he says, "We would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you, those meddling kids." There's all these this meta stuff, all this referential stuff. But this is the part that got me. Behind Rafkin, there's a blur of shadow and motion. After a sharp thunk, Rafkin drops to the floor, revealing Maggie standing behind him with a meta sculpture. She blows a stray lock of hair out of her face. Her accent has now vanished. She is the maid is the one who's in cahoots with Cyrus.
So she's double crossing.
She's not Kalina. She ends up getting killed in this, or we think she gets killed. She gets the Juggernaut goes after her, and we see her die, or we think we see her die, because we just see her get attacked, and then we don't hear from her or see her again because they're running for their lives, and it goes on from there.
Yeah.
And then there was 1, 2, 3, 4 more versions. And then there's other versions of this that I don't even have. There was a version that James Gunn wrote, because he's one of the he was famous for being one of the ghost writers, one of the cleanup crew.
That was one of our hints. Yeah, for the shirt. We said James Gunn has an uncredited writing on this movie that you guys are trying to guess. Somehow someone got that and figured out the movie. I was really surprised.
Considering the way this film originally ended, and then there was the way the 13 Ghosts, the movie that we shot, how it ended. But then they brought us back for reshoots almost like a just over a month before the film came out. They brought us back for reshoots to add some stuff to the film that they didn't even have yet. And as it turned out, that was the morning of 9/11.
Oh.
Because I got up, and when I went to turn the TV on to set it for Big Brother, all I saw was all this footage of the World Trade Center. I didn't know what was actually happening.
Oh, I don't think a lot of people didn't at first.
Didn't know anything beyond that, and went to set. And when I got to set, there was this somber, dark, because you had the director, you had the director of photography, you had some of the studio. So you had people had come up from LA just for the day to do the reshoots. Now they don't know. There's such a huge question mark in their vision because they don't know if they're even going to get to go back
Yeah.
Well,
home.
they
All the planes were shut down.
Mhm.
Everything was shut down. So while this is all unfolding, I'm dressed up as the big ghost in my ghost clothes, and all the other ghosts are in their makeups, and we're doing reshoots. For example, the scene at the end of the movie, as it is now, when the thing explodes, and you see all the ghosts have been broken from their cells, and you see us leaving the house, and you see us dancing off into the woods, kind of thing. There's like a shot of us leaving the house and going off into the woods. Well, that never existed in the first film that we shot. We shot that on 9/11. So it's one of those things, talking about being able to watch something back later as an actor in it. I can't now watch the film and not know that.
Yeah.
Immediately I have the visions of us shooting that scene of us dancing off, and then they go cut, and we all huddled around a TV set in the studio, and we're watching live what's going on in New York. And then, okay, next scene, we're set up. And then you go back to seeing and you do your ghost stuff, and then cut, and everybody goes back to the TV set to see what's going on. And it was such a bizarre, surreal day. For example, one of the things they had, in the movie, when the house gets blown up, they actually blew. I mean, first of all, it was an actual house that they had built in one of the largest special effects sound stages in the world at the time. They had built, it was like a 2-story, it was like 2,500 panes of glass, and each of those pieces of glass had all the etchings on them, the big steel girders. I mean, the gears, when you saw something going up and down, it was going up and down. It was all practical. Walking into that set, my immediate thought was, if this doesn't win an Academy Award for production design, and I'd never been on a better looking set in my life. It was what you see in the film is exactly what we saw.
Yeah, that was like one of the things that we were literally about to start asking you about. Was the set. I was just telling him before we started, I want to know about the house. Was it really 2 stories? Is it really all that glass? You just answered like 3 of my questions.
Well, the shot you see in the film when they're driving up to the house, and you see the house with the forest behind them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, when the house blows up and you see the ghosts going off, that's not real. That's like a composite.
Okay.
Because the house was actually in a sound stage in a studio. So any shots outside of the house were visual effects, but the stuff in the house was there. And the wheel, the ocularis, the thing that we stood on, that was all there. The only thing that wasn't real was when the thing starts shifting and
The
sliding,
machine,
and you have the big gears and all that.
The CGI gears, the Lionsgate
CG.
intro.
But the reality was even scarier, because instead of all those gears going up and down, you just had a big ass 10-foot hole in the ground with massive fans blowing air up at you, and all these really hot lights, flashing lights that are supposed to be, and they're flickering because they're supposed to be replicating like lightning and the gears going up and down. So you have all of this commotion coming out of this hole in the ground while you're just standing there freely spinning around on this circle. And I'm like, woo, woo. And Ken Kersinger, who plays
Jason.
Jason, he was the stunt coordinator on
No
13
way.
Ghosts.
That's wild.
So I said to Ken, I said, once again, another great advice from a stunt coordinator. I said to him, I'm getting a little dizzy here. I'm scared as we're spinning around on this thing. And because if you remember the shot when we're all spinning around, I'm like arched back, and I'm completely nude except for a pair of underwear. And I'm arched back, and I'm almost 600 pounds, and I'm in such an awkward position. And I'm spinning around this 10-foot hole in the ground. And I said to Ken, what do I do if I feel like I'm going to fall? He says, fall backwards.
It's great advice.
The advice
great
you
advice
get from stunt coordinators. It's like, let go, fall back.
Yeah. So I guess they had the lights and stuff in there to kind of the lights, flashing all over your guys' body as you spun around.
Exactly.
So when they
because
put
then they add all that, and the effects of the stuff that they have to add the effects of it. So if there's smoke or if there's lightning or flashing, and the air from the fans, so those big production fans, and then think about it, you're shooting in a house that is glass on the bottom, glass on top, glass on the side, and now you have a full film crew and 12 hot breathing makeup covered actors plus the real actors, and you have to add like friggin' 10,000 whatever of light to you basically have to overlight the thing so you don't have any reflections, which now makes it so hot. Then they have to turn the fans off because the fans are whenever there's dialogue, you can't have the fans going because you have to be able to hear. So it's so hot in there. And I like to say, when you watch the film, this is my drinking game for 13 Ghosts, and that is find the crew member, because throughout the film, most of the crew is wearing black T-shirts like you're wearing, so that they can basically crouch down in the corner of a shot when the camera's rolling, so you don't see anybody. But every so often, there's like that awkward crew member who wore his white shirt that day because he completely forgot.
It's always that guy,
the goofy guy.
But for someone who's watched the movie more than once, that's my little drinking game. It's like every time you see a crew member, take a shot because there's reflections. You can't help it. There's so much glass in that film.
Well, yeah, man, we appreciate you coming on. We're got to have you back at some point in time. Honestly, now that we got your information, we may just bug you just to talk about movies. So if you got to block us, you got to block us. But yeah, definitely thank you for coming on. Like, this was awesome.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
That was such a fun time, and that was just a small piece of the interview. There is way more 13 Ghost stuff that we couldn't fit into the episode, but we're going to drop the whole 2-hour interview on video on YouTube. We talked about a ton of stuff, including like the X-Files and Scooby-Doo and Trick or Treat. And of course, some really interesting things about the original versions of 13 Ghosts. There's a lot more of that kind of stuff. Honestly, fucking awesome dude. I really hope that we get a chance to talk to him again. So definitely go over to his Facebook and Instagram page, like it if you haven't already, so you could possibly win some autographs from him. All right, so on to ratings and kill count. So we got a total of 12 kills. We got 1 through 6 is going to be Cyrus's Special Forces science guys. They were all killed by the Juggernaut. We got number 7, Damon, who had his throat slashed by Kalina. Number 8 was Jean, Arthur's wife. She burned up in a house fire. Number 9 is Ben Moss, who got cut in half by a glass door. Number 10 is Dennis Rafkin, who was beaten and killed by the Juggernaut and the hammer. Kalina, who got crushed by a glass wall. And number 12 is Cyrus, who was sliced and diced by the satanic machine. All right, so favorite kill.
So I went with the lawyer getting cut in half.
Well, of course.
By far the best kill. My second was the guy being ripped and bent backwards in half through the trunk of a car by the Juggernaut in the beginning. Thought that was fucking awesome looking.
It was awesome. I, of course, went with Ben Moss as well for my number 1. And my number 2 was Dennis, because we got both ghosts. And I think that the fucking body snap was really cool. But another thing was it's a really impactful death.
Yeah, it's probably a better death, but I was sad to see Dennis go. So
yeah. That's what I'm saying,
it wasn't
though.
on my radar.
All right, what do you got for rating?
All right, so I rated this movie a 4.0.
Oh, okay.
And so this definitely a love-hate relationship with this movie, with a newfound respect for it. You know, growing up, I was surprised to even hear you say that this movie got such bad like ratings and did so bad in the theaters, because my memory of this as a kid is you getting it on DVD and us watching it and checking out the special features and reading about all the like ghost backstories that was on the DVD, and this movie being super awesome because of the ghosts. Like the ghosts carried this movie. They're fucking scary as fuck. There's a bunch of like really, really, really creepy characters in this movie. But then later on, I watched it and I was disappointed with a lot of the CGI when I watched it later on as an adult. And then watching it back this time, I was kind of had a rejuvenated love for it. The ghosts will always carry this movie. Every time I watch it, I still get that same feeling I get whenever I was a kid and I watched it. Like, it's like my mind can't remember how scary, like the jackal and the juggernaut and the hammer, or even some of the ones I forgot, like the fucking torso or the pilgrimess. My mind forgets how fucking creepy they are.
Well, there's
so
a lot of ghosts. I mean,
Yeah.
there are technically 12. That's a lot of scary ghosts to keep track of.
Yeah, yeah. So, and every time I see it, I still get that like nostalgic feeling. The makeup effects, obviously incredible. The practical effects on some of the kills we get are really awesome. The set, I have a newfound respect for, because
Definitely.
that is something that I never really put that much thought into. I thought the idea of a glass house was kind of dumb. But now knowing what I know and knowing that this was an actual house built in a studio, like the house was an actual fucking house that they built.
Yeah, and all those panels and stuff that you see moving around, they're all real panels. Like all those those big gears you'd see spin and the door open, that's all real.
Yeah, so the fact that they built all that is super incredibly impressive. And then the challenges of shooting a movie in a glass house with all the reflections and stuff would be absolutely incredible. So hats off to them for pulling this off. My two biggest complaints with this movie is the CGI, mainly the gears in the middle of the machine, which would have been hard for them to ever make practical, but I would have been happier with a small, like scaled down version of something being practical instead of it being so big. Like I would have just been happier with anything else that would have been practical. And then the way they shot the movie with the very flashy, quick camera angles and stuff. But overall, this is a classic for me. It has a heavy dose of nostalgia for me. And then outside of that, whether you love or hate this movie, if you're into like really awesome, scary looking fucking characters, this movie is one to check out.
It's funny, you gave it what, a 4? So I gave it a 3.9. So we were really close. Oh man, you kind of hit on a lot of the stuff I would talk about. Some of the stuff that I just dislike about it is like I hate the guys in the beginning with the plastic suits. I mean, I know it's back in 2001 that was supposed to be cool, but it's not cool. It's just bad. Another thing is like I think Matthew Lillard is like the comedy relief somewhat of this movie, but for some reason they decided to add the babysitter as also the comedy relief, and I don't like her necessarily her comedy compared to Matthew Lillard. Like they could have just like honestly, the beginning and the very end is where I don't really care for her. I'm totally fine with her through, 85% of the movie. Like once she gets scared and shit pops off and she kind of chills out with the comedy stuff, I like her then. But yeah, I'm not a fan of her in the beginning and the very end.
She's an out of place character.
She
I'm
is.
gonna say that.
She doesn't fit. Like it's Matthew Lillard's already doing the comedy. He's got his funny moments throughout the movie. He kills comedy anyway. And I felt like it was almost like a third wheel when you stuck it in there. So yeah, she feels kind of out of place for parts of the movie. Cannot stand the flashy thing. Just give me the ghosts, man. I've always said like my thing with this movie was I need more ghosts. And then after sitting and kind of watching it and writing it out, we actually get a lot of the ghosts, but you get just 1 second shots of them. And it's like, if you would have just gave me them doing, the same exact scene, same amount of time, but without the flashy, I feel like it wouldn't be that. Like, it wouldn't be like that. Like,
Just give us the goats eating their hay.
yep.
That's all we need.
Yeah, the set, super impressive. Like, he literally told us what you see in the movies, what we seen on set. It was exactly built just like that. And that's impressive. That's really impressive. The practical effects on the ghosts are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I do have definitely a more respect. I also love the fact that I totally missed the library scene and I was able to put that together now, and it kind of makes the movie better to me. So, yep, 3.9 from me. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow, like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, check out C Ernst Harth's page. Tell a friend, a family member, or your pretend dead uncle about the show, and we hope to see you next time.
Bah.